CCL Sports Cards fans, welcome back. It is time to talk about two uber young superstars in baseball, both of whom I am enamored with while watching them as players on a nightly basis and their respective card values for different reasons. But as I will show you, Michael Harris has much more to offer if you are looking for a potential payday down the road. He is the player to buy and the player I continue to buy. Now, if you're a lover of Jrod and his card price, I would love to hear your thoughts. And I'm always open, but much like some of these cats in 2022 Bowman Chrome and their respective prices, I just can't get there and prefer to wait before buying in cases like Jrod's. But before we get to that, if you're a fan of the work, research, and the platform here at CCL, be sure to hit that like button on this episode as well as the subscribe icon. We sit at 680 subs as of today's writing and are marching steadily to 1,000 by the end of the year, so thank you very much. Now on the surface, both Jrod and Harris are highly investable. Both had super impressive MLB debuts. And while Jrod scuffled in terms of a slow start, very little of that was his fault. If you didn't see the stats, he was called out on strikes more than any other player in baseball to begin the year, and on pitches that StatCast showed to be well off the plate, some of which were so egregious, even I hollered at the TV on occasion, and I'm not even a Seattle fan. But not even Jrod complained much until his coach called out the league and said, "This is insane." Did things begin to change for the young slugger? Now, Michael Harris debuted a little later in late May, and if you're unaware, he did scuffle in his first 4 games before getting comfortable and tearing the cover off the ball when the calendar rolled over to June and beyond, hitting well over 300 in all months except July, where he probably had to make some adjustments to how pitchers were approaching him. But he continued to crush the ball in August and September. Both Michael Harris II and Julio Roriguez are 5-tool players. Although I did have one person tell me in a debate at the Expo that Michael Harris isn't a 5-tool guy. Well, in my mind, that's really not debatable. I didn't challenge the comment. It did highlight to me that some folks continue to follow the crowd or assume that because a card is more expensive, it's just a better investment. And that is simply not true. And a lesson I've had to learn both in sports cards and the stock market. In fact, the opposite is often true when it comes to a young company or a young athlete and his card prices. The more expensive an investment is, the riskier it tends to be. And the farther it may fall over time. I can point to so many stocks that were hotter than hot during the pandemic and have been absolutely demolished. And I don't say that to be hurtful, because I know the pain that comes with investing in a stock that goes bust. I lived the .com era and lost most of my entire hard-earned nest egg over 20 years ago. But let's take an empirical and comprehensive look at Mr. Harris and Jrod. Julio is turning 22 in just a few weeks, and Harris is just a few months younger. Both players are amazing center fielders with cannons for arms, but that can be subjective at times, and in my opinion, I really do feel that Harris is a marginally better center fielder. But both are elite, and we can debate who is better all day long. Harris plays for the Braves, a great market with a great history of collectors, and Seattle is by no means a slouch. In fact, he benefits from an expanded fan base given its proximity to Canada. But let's call all of the above equal in terms of added value or potential gains in value over time. Now, Harris was not an all-star and Jrod was, and not that one all-star game makes or breaks a player's card prices or his career, but had Harris played a little longer, he'd have gotten the all-star nod. I'm certain. Now, stat-wise, and this is really the meat and potatoes of any player's value, let's take a look at the players' stats in a side-by-side comparison to see how the season turned out. Michael Harris had a final WAR of 5.3 with 414 at-bats, 123 hits, 49 of them for extra bases, 19 homers, and a 297 average with 20 stolen bases, and he only got caught twice. That's really good. Now, by comparison, Julio had a WAR of 6.2. That is super impressive. I think we can all agree, especially for a debut season. He notched 511 at-bats, 145 hits, 56 of them for extra bases, 28 homers, and an average of 284 with 25 steals and 7 caught stealing. Based on all that, we would maybe give a slight edge to Julio for value, but let's expand Harris's numbers and give him 23% more at-bats. His final stat line would read, and again, I've put this in a side-by-side chart for illustrative purposes. Harris's numbers would have been a WAR of 6.5, edging out Jrod. He would have had 509 at-bats and 23 home runs. So the power does go to Jrod for now. 60 extra base hits for Harris, and that gives another edge to Harris. 151 hits and 25 steals and 3 caught stealing. I think you'll agree that Harris wins that hands down. That said, if you're a collector or a Mariners fan, then pay whatever you want for Jrod's first autos. However, if you're an investor, as I am, when I do deep dives like this, you need to be cautious. But to be clear, I do collect and will pay very nice sums for certain players, like the great Barry Sanders of the Detroit Lions. And what a card costs is relatively irrelevant to me as a collector. My point is very simple, and much like I've commented in previous episodes of players who cost a hefty premium when compared to league stars and their comparable cards, Julio Rodriguez is a sell up here. Look, I'm not here to bash players or your particular investing style when it comes to cards you invest in. I share these ideas because to me it is invaluable information to subscribers of my show and those it touches, and my hope is that someone sees value in it. I've gotten crushed on so many cards over the years because I would invest in who everybody else is buying, whether it's Jrod these days or Ellie, the Christian Hernandezes. People are so quick to invest in a player because everyone likes them, but their production rarely justifies the premium. So you need to pay attention. I like to use Mookie Betts, which tends to upset people when I mention comparisons of this nature. But guys like Mookie Betts or Bryce Harper, a personal favorite of mine, right there, are really a longer-term high watermark in terms of value. And Mookie's 2014 Bowman Chrome Auto and PSA 10 just sold for $1,226 just a few days ago. Jrod's 2019 first Bowman Chrome Auto and PSA 10 just sold for $2,195. Michael Harris's first Bowman Chrome Autos and PSA 10 by comparison can be had for as low as $425, roughly 1/5 the cost of Jrod. I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. So if we take a step back, Julio costs double that of Mookie, and Michael Harris's first Bowman Chrome Auto has plenty of runway to get to Mookie's price level, should Michael continue to dominate over time. And perhaps most important, should he falter, there is not a ton of air between $425 and $0. I won't even go into the pop counts and print run differences between 2014 and 2019 and 2020, or the fact that Mookie is headed to Cooperstown already, and both Michael and Jrod would be thrilled to have the career of Mookie Betts. It seems pretty clear to me that this is a scenario where the folks who choose to buy Jrod at these levels are relying on the greater fool theory, and that is no different than the tulip bulb frenzy, or Bobby Witt base autos in PSA 10 at $4,000, or buying into Tesla at its peak valuation. While you can make money, you are hoping that someone will pay an even greater sum before the air gets let out of the balloon, and that is a dangerous proposition to me. If I were going to buy Jrod's first autos in PSA 10, I would pay about $800. And while that's above Harris's current price, who I think is way too cheap down here, I think you can make a good amount of money over the longer term on Jrod with that entry point, say over 10 years, which should be more than sufficient to have prices stop falling for a lot of baseball cards, and then a subsequent rebound. However, if Julio's 2019 Bowman Chrome Auto and PSA 10 never gets to $800 or thereabouts, then I guess I just missed that one. But there's always another prospect who becomes a superstar, who will surface, who is investable, and I will continue to buy Harris down here for my money. Folks, that's it. That's all. As mentioned earlier, feel free to pick apart my thesis and tell me why you think Jrod may be a good investment up here. I'm all ears. I remain open and don't take things like that personally. Keep in mind that anything said on this channel is strictly my opinion and should be taken as such. You all have a fantastic week.